Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone. Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We're your hosts, Emily and Leanne from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building, and today we're talking with Jessica about her journey. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys for having me. Excited to share.
Well, before we get into your family building story, we'd love for you just to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. My name is Jessica Attime. I am originally from Connecticut, New England girl through and through. Moved to Boston when my significant other and I became together. Started a career here in e-commerce. Have been in my career for many years now, and I live right in the South Shore of Boston, right outside. Love it. I don't think I would be anywhere else. Come from a very large family. I have 7 siblings, the youngest of them all. And yeah, so I am, that's really the basics of it.
Great. Thank you for sharing all that. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey starting a family? Where did it all begin?
Sure. I've always been a career focused person, education first. But I know coming from a very large family, I did want to have a child eventually. As the years progressed, I noticed that, okay, my late 20s was turning into my early 30s. My early 30s was turning into my mid 30s. And so the clock was ticking. And so, at that point, my husband and I, we sat down and had a talk and like what's our next steps? Are we going to move forward with a kid, or do we see our lives without children? And for me, I wanted us to have kids. I wanted us to have a family. And so at 35, I'm now 37. So at 35, I was like, okay, now there's no better time. I always wanted this perfect time, right? You want everything to be in the most perfect way possible. You want the house, you want the career, you want to be able to juggle so many different things and say, I have the perfect life. And now I'm responsible and okay to bring a child into this world. Um, and unfortunately, like there is no perfect time. And I had to say to myself, it's really now or not never, but the later you wait, the longer it is, right? And so at 35, we started trying. Um, I was on the IED for a bit. I was on the IED for about 10 years. So once I got off the IED back in August of 2024, I then uh, wanted to dive a little deeper into my hormonal issues, any gut issues. I knew that if I wanted to have a kid, I wanted to go into it at my healthiest. I've always been extremely active. I've always been health conscious in what I eat, what I drink, etc. But I knew that I personally had like gut issues that I wanted to figure out what was going on. And just, I've been on the IED for 10 years. So I know hormonally, I wanted to be, I want to check everything and make sure that I was good in the right place to move forward. And so they say, after you get off the IED, you don't necessarily get your menstrual back until 6 months, maybe even later. So I did not think that my menstrual would come back in, I was thinking 10 months, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything I possibly can do and just live my healthiest lifestyle. And then hopefully everything will go back to its regular natural course. Um, and so it ended up coming back literally a month later. And so I was like into action. I was so excited because I'm like, okay, great. I can like now jump into this. I can start doing what I need to do. But in that time, I started working with a integrative functional medicine doctor, and we started working to like the root causes of hormonal imbalances and gut issues. And what we learned is that I was insulin resistant a bit, and then my cortisol levels were just out of whack entirely. Like I was chronically stressed. And that was due to and just really giving my all to work. And so that was a rude awakening of like these are the bare minimum things that you need to change. And so diving into that, threw myself into nonstop of nutrition, you know, getting all wrapped up and obsessed on the best vitamins, the best, drinks to have, what not to do, all of the restrictions, right?
Mm.
Doing yoga, doing Pilates.
You can go down a rabbit hole when you start.
Yeah, like I literally was pouring money and time and energy into so many different things to hopefully in my end result just and at that time it wasn't I didn't even know that there was a issue, right? Like I was just doing my due diligence because I started researching and then I started pouring myself into it, right? And so we were trying for up until from I would say October of that time frame, 2024, up until February 2025. I was tracking every month. I became entirely obsessed with tracking. Your your intimate level with your husband becomes not so like personal and intimate and to
Mm.
I he says it's so funny. It was like you just took like the joy out of it. It's like, okay, it's time, let's go. And he's like, can I warm up? I'm like, nope, we gotta go, we gotta go. And so I just and he was constantly just like, you're stressing yourself out too much, right? Like this is not a job. But to me, it became one because I had a goal and I had a goal to reach it at a particular time. And I think that's where, if I had to go back, I maybe would have changed things because that's where I had it wrong, right? I had a plan and it like your plan goes out the window realistically. But for me, it's like I need to stick to this time frame because I have a goal and I need to be pregnant by, you know, I don't know, April, and I need to have a baby shower by then, and like et cetera,
Mm.
right? And the
Yeah.
list goes on and like that doesn't happen. So we ended up taking a trip for my birthday in Arizona that March. And we went to a like a health resort, spa resort, right? And I was like, I'm so wrapped up into trying to conceive that I really just need a break. And for me, like there's nothing like a spa. Like I dive in, I stay there all day, I read a book, I drink my tea. It's just relaxation to its core. And so we're there and he's like, this just decompress, do all of the things that you have been wanting to do, but just have not done because you've been so focused on trying to have a baby. And so I did, right? I did the saunas, I did the hot tub, I did the gym, I was hiking a ton. Like everything you could possibly think of. I was drinking a few glasses of wine, right? Like I was like, okay, it's okay if I do this. Lo and behold, we get back and I'm like, I was not paying attention to my calendar. Oh my God, my period is not here. What's going on? And I'm like, could this be right? Like, total shock. So, of course, excited, test, and find out I'm pregnant. And I'm like, then I go down a whole spiral because I was just at this spa doing
Yeah.
unnecessarily, things that I would never do knowing that you're pregnant and like all the things that you shouldn't do. And I'm like, oh my God, I waited all this time for this to happen. This happens and I am like literally acting like an irresponsible person. And he's like, you have no idea, like you had no idea, right? He's like, you just never know, like he's like, it's okay, like let's just take it one step at a time. So we end up going to my OBGYN. We get a at that time, it was almost 4 or 5 weeks. They did not wanna do a ultrasound because it was quite early. We had a trip planned to Hawaii for my husband's, work, and so at that time, we were gonna go for a week, and I was like, "Well, if I'm pregnant, I don't know if flying that far is like okay. Obviously this is entirely new to me. And so we ended up asking, and our doctor's like, let's get a scan, and just for ha-has and before you go, so you feel comfortable. And for me,
Mm.
like, of course I had to advocate a little bit for that, because typically doctors will say, no, wait 6 to 8 weeks, of course, because typically nothing ends up showing on the scan. So we end up going, and at that time, there was a small heartbeat. So there was some cardiac activity, and which was great. And she's like, "You're fine. You can go ahead and travel." And so we went ahead, went to Hawaii. We came back, and um, the following month in April, we ended up having a miscarriage. And so that for me, you don't really realize how much, even though it was only a couple of months into it, at that time, we wanted it so bad, and we had it in our hands, and we had our grasps on it, and then it just entirely just, you know, unfolded for us. And I went down this rabbit hole of like, well, maybe if I didn't go to this spa and do all of these heated things, or work out too intensely, or drink the wine, or maybe if I didn't travel this long journey to Hawaii, I could have been fine, right? And you start to self blame. And I went through a grieving period for about a couple of months while I was trying to heal. Um, and that definitely took some time. Until this day, I'm asked like, did you totally take all that grief out? Are you still it's like, I don't know if you ever get over it. Um, to me, it was still a child nonetheless. It was still my child. It was still a baby that I was hopeful for. So fast forward to our next time of trying, which we knew that we had to take a bit of time. So fast forward to about June. Our doctor had said, well, there is no cardiac development back in April. And so at that time had referred us to a infertility specialist. Reason because at that time I was 35. And of course they like to, label geriatrics at that time, right? Nonetheless, of like, you're 35, you're too old to have a child. Like, let's go on to the next steps. But they knew I was trying for 6 months. At that time, I didn't think anything. I was just like, what's another doctor, right? What's another resource if I have it? Like, why not? Like, let me just go ahead and then see what they say. We had a first consult, and we waited about 2, 3 months to have that first consult. And so in the meantime of that, we were still trying, and nothing, right? Month to month to month, you're just getting defeated. So we saw our first specialist in, I want to say August of 2025. And we took some blood work. And at that point, she wanted me to do HSG and see if there's anything going on in the fallopian tube world. And so for me, I'm like, okay, well, what's that? Right? Like, let me go down the deep hall of that and find out what that is, because never heard of it.
Surprise.
And yeah. And so of course I do that, right? And I'm on social media, and I'm reading about it, and I'm YouTubing it, and I am just like scaring the living heck out of myself of the entire process. And I'm like, well, I don't know if this is for me. Like, this is so uncomfortable. Like, it just looks uncomfortable. And you hear so many different stories. You go on Reddit, you see all these reviews. Obviously, one thing I do not recommend is doing that. Like, don't even bother. Read up a little bit, but like, don't do what I did. And so we ended up going to the procedure, and it is uncomfortable. But we ended up finding out my fallopian tubes are were normal. We were both open, and we're working just fine, which is great, right? Didn't know what to expect, and
Mm.
did it hurt? Absolutely. But in the in the end, I'm like, okay, it was worth it, sure. But I did want to run out of there as soon as I got there, right? I was just like, all right, is this worth it? And my husband's like, you're already here. What's the worst? And I'm like, oh boy, like you get
Oh,
back to,
that's yeah.
yeah.
Have you
It's
ever
so
had a
funny
pap
because
smear? Like there, you can't say what's the worst when you're talking about like women's reproductive health care.
correct. I love him to death. He's so supportive. But after that, we were, we were supposed to have a follow-up to discuss next steps. And this follow-up, September hit, and that was after our appointment in August. And I, didn't get a call. I wasn't sure what was happening. I called the doctor's office. They're like, well, we don't have an appointment until October. Typically, patients book their appointment at the same time of doing their HSG. And I'm like, this is entirely new to me. I don't know, next steps here, right? I don't even know what
Mm.
is the next step. And so I'm like, okay. So I took a step back and I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I need a more personable experience. I need a more direct and educational like timeline, right? I need a step by step process. And I did a little bit of research before on different doctors in the infertility world, and I saw that there was a clinic near me that was new and recently opening. They were reputable doctors, and so I'm like, okay, let's do a consult. What can hurt? And so we reached out to this clinic, and we asked to have a consult. Um, and right off the bat, we spoke to the doctor, and it just felt a little bit more personable. What's going on with you? Let's talk through your plan. Let me help you understand the IVF world, right? And so she had recommended that we go forward with IVF. And at that time, it was either IUI or go right into it. And, from the research I did, my husband and I were just like, what is there to lose? And this, for us, IVF it just made more sense than going into IUI with limited percentages, right? For
Mm.
just overall. And at that time, we were just still in this bracket of unexplained infertility, right? There was no rhyme or reason. And so we went ahead, and that was September. We had started our first cycle of IVF. And maybe I'm going to be a little bit more vocal maybe than most on this, but I think there's a gap between so many IVF clinics and patients, and understanding that a person who's going into this for their very first time, they do not understand most of what's happening. They don't understand, let alone the abbreviation of some of these like
Mhm.
terminologies, right?
Yeah.
There's like the long list of just things. And I'm like, what's what? What's, TTC obviously trying to conceive, right? Like that's the easiest. But then you get down to like all these other things, and the grading of an embryo and all these things that I'm just like, what are you saying to me? I need a whole index of a laundry list
Mm.
of like what you're saying to me so I can understand, right? But then also it's sometimes I feel like there's in my journey, I have experienced where there's a lack of empathy because they have dealt with it so much. And they're not that they're insensitive to the community, but because they deal with it on a day to day, from a person who's just walking right into the front door and saying, "Hey, this is my first time. I don't know what's what." It's, I didn't get even as much as I wanted this personable experience, I did not get a handhold walkthrough. I got a, here's your medication. Um, you know, even with a pharmacy, right? I'm thinking, oh, let me go to CVS and go pick up my prescriptions. No one tells you that your fertility prescriptions are with a fertility pharmacy,
Mhm.
right? Like you have
Yeah.
no idea. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. So I'm looking in my message portal and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is entirely new to me. So where is this pharmacy? And it's like an hour away from my home, and now I have to, travel and go get that and figure out all of the logistics. And so the lack of communication, I think, is like the biggest thing
Mhm.
for women who are going through this process of they need a little bit of more like, here's what to expect, here's the process of this, here's the outline of this, here's a step by step, because just saying, "Here's the medication, now go home and start your injections. Here's a calendar, here's day 1." And you're
Yeah.
looking at the calendar. I remember sitting at home, like, I don't know, a box, like a massive, U-Haul box with a ton of medications in it, and I'm looking at it, and I am in defeat. My husband's like, "They trust you with this? They know you're not a nurse, right?"
Yes,
Like,
yes.
yes,
Yep.
absolutely. He's like, "Can you overdose by, like, not doing things correctly?" And I'm like, "Hey, maybe, but, I'm just gonna follow what I know here."
It is tough. And I mean, unfortunately, that even when clinics are really well intentioned and prioritize patient education, some of it just comes down to time. There aren't enough hours in the day. So it's really common. We talk to people all the time, and my experience being like, "What are we doing here?" Somebody needs to like explain it to me, like I'm 5. And that's one of the
Yes.
gaps that we try to fill. We have a lot of resources on our website for anybody who's listening about, like a breakdown, a beginner's guide to IVF that walks you through step by step. We have a whole section that's about all those acronyms because it does feel like you're learning a second language. This is such a hard journey to go through. And even if you have a medical background, even if you understand kind of the mechanics of what's going on, you add in the emotional piece on top of it, and it can be overwhelming at times.
You lose yourself. Yeah, yeah, for sure, and it is a all around emotional, physical, mental toll,
Yeah.
and you do not realize how big it is going to be until you are in the depths of it, right? Just opening that box of medication alone, I was like, "Wait a second. What am I getting myself into? How is this gonna affect me? Will this affect me?" We're going into it with nothing but hope and just wanting that end goal of a child, and we just don't think about anything else outside of that. And I'm like, "Well, if this is what it takes, I'm gonna do it. There's nothing, I'll figure it out." And so we went down they gave us videos, and I'm watching the step by step videos, and I'm like, well, hopefully I'm doing this right. Here's nothing, right?
Mhm.
And so day after day, I you become a pro at injecting, right? Because you have no choice. And I ended up doing it myself. My husband was on work trips, and I'm like, I rather do it myself anyways because it's just you just feel more comfortable. And so our first cycle went for a bit. It ended around sometime in October, and we ended up getting 25 follicles. And out of that 25 follicles, we ended up getting 8 blastocysts. And then out of that 8 blastocysts, we did do PGT, and we ended up getting 1. And we did end up getting another one, but it was mosaic. So they were unknown on the DNA. And so they wanted to retest it. It was a very rude awakening when they said, 1, right? So, like, our percentage, I was thinking, like, "All right, what's, 50, 40% of what you get, from your blastocyst?" And when you get 1 back, yes, I was extremely, like, grateful for my 1, but I did feel so defeated after this entire process. I'm like, I gave it all I had, and how is it one? And so we ended up retesting the second one, and that one actually was not viable through the thawing process. So when they went ahead and unthawed it for biopsy, it did not survive. And so we actually didn't find out about that. It was, and this is where I mean about communication with your IVF clinic is so important. When I ended up talking to the nurse about it, I'm like, hey, I haven't heard anything about this one embryo. Can you give me some feedback? She's like, oh yeah, by the way, it didn't thaw, and we were not able to biopsy it. And I'm like, in the long run, we would have hoped that we would have had better communication surrounding that, considering like we had our hopes and prayers set on this second embryo. And, at that point, I was just like feeling so overwhelmed with just in general the process, but also with communication with our clinic and just overall, like what else can possibly go wrong? Like barrier after barrier, hurdles after hurdles. And so we knew that we had our one. And speaking with the doctor, she's like, your follicles and your the number of eggs, the quantity that you are developing through the cycle is fantastic. But the drop off that we're seeing from PGT is interesting because by obviously from 8, we should have had at least 3 to 4, and we ended up having 1, and so that was something they wanted to look into a bit more, and we did a karyotype testing, a little bit deeper dive on chromosomal between my partner and I, and so that test took a few weeks, came back, and we found out there was nothing. There was no negative against us. Nothing came up from either side. And so we're like, all right, great. Where do we go from here? I just need one answer. Like if that gave me something, then it was a piece that I could say, all right, we finally have a reason. Now let's go from here and see how we can fix this, right? When you're left with nothing, you're driving yourself mad, really, just trying to pinpoint what exactly could be the focal point and what is the reason. We know that we wanted maybe 2 kids in our future. And so they say, for every kid you would want, have at least 2 to 3 embryos stored. And so for us, we're like, well, if we use this one embryo and our implant fails, we have nothing left. And so we would have to do this entire process all over again. And I'm like, I'm already in it. I'm knees deep into it. Let's just go again. And obviously, when I say let's just go again, this is not, I don't take that lightly or easy. Like, I obviously mentally, financially, emotionally, all the things, you definitely want to make sure that you are in the right space to do it again. Because yes, the stimulation window, right, is very short. It's 2 weeks, right, of just constant injections. But the overall cycle window is not, right? Like it's just very much consuming. Um, and so we ended up going for a second cycle. We started in January. We had 62 follicles, right? 62. And I was just
Wow.
like,
Whoa.
this is massive, like madness. But prior to starting, I told myself, like, there's one thing I need to do is I need to cut my stress levels, like badly. I don't know what I need to do. Like, I need to zen the hell out. Like, I need to do some more yoga, do some more reading, go walk, take a chill pill. Like, I just did that. My sister had just had her baby not too long ago, and so I spent so much of my time just consumed helping her, and just easing just easing off the stress as possible, as much as possible, and doing things that bring me joy, that has truly, and I don't know if that helped, right? But what I do know is that that was a drastic difference from my first cycle to the second cycle. So I'm like, hey, something helped here. And so we ended up getting 26 eggs retrieved, and then blastocysts, we ended up getting 15. And from there, your number when you do PGT obviously chucks down a bit. But I'm thinking, okay, if we have, if for my age, say 40%, 50% of that, we'll be walking away with, maybe six, seven, who, around there. Like that'll be great for us. Of course. And this is what I mean by don't plan, because you're back at, you're planning your numbers, you're
Mhm.
like planning your future with things, and it's like these numbers don't, they're just numbers.
Right, they're averages and they don't necessarily represent what's going to happen for you. But it's what it's what we reach for and
Yeah.
hold on to.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important. Statistics are important, but yeah.
Yeah, but if you don't get that number, then you're going down a rabbit hole as to, okay, well, why? Why am I not, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, if that is a stat, why am I not a part of that stat, right? What makes me
Right.
different? Um, and so we ended up getting 4 out of our 15. And obviously that for us was a major drop off, and it
Yeah.
was great, right? We have 4. I'm ecstatic, but it is a question as to, okay, well, why is it we should have at least 3 more or 4 more. Why do we have such a major gap here? And even, talking to our doctor, she's like, you're developing so largely, but your drop off is so intense. And your drop off seems as if you are 42 versus 36. And so with this second cycle, we were just like, okay, this is amazing. We now can, you know, move forward. We still don't quite have an answer as to why. We know, age is a part of it. We know equality is a part of it. My husband did his, I don't know, he at least had 3 to 4 semen analysis, and they all came back like perfect. I mean, his motility and mobility and all of the things were just going. And so that put that into perspective of, okay, well, I'm not trying to do a blame game here, but if it's not you, then it's me, right? Or why genetically do we not does my egg and your sperm do not align well? Because it right through PGT, we're seeing that massive drop off. Then you start to spiral, and you're like, well, were we meant to have kids? Are we supposed
Mhm.
to, right? Because it's like, why are things not aligning? And so now that we have 5 embryos, and they're all graded very highly, and of course, that's another thing in the IVF world, right? Like, you're like, I'm so grateful that we have these 5, and we are going to move forward to transfer 1. But in my first cycle, we saw that I had a polyp, and it was pretty big, and so they wanted to remove the polyp. It was within my uterine cavity, in which case could possibly impact implantation. So this week on Wednesday, I had a hysteroscopy. So fresh out of the hysteroscopy procedure, and after my retrievals, um, I'm like, this hysteroscopy is going to be easy, right? And so it like, not knowing what I'm going, through, or the process, but it you look at another procedure as like, all right, it's another procedure, just
Mhm.
let me go through it with the same mindset. And I'd say, like, find a slogan for yourself. Find something that you words that you can hold on to. And for me, it has been, I can do hard things. So every time I'm in the operating room, or every time I'm, in uncomfortable position, the constant blood work, the scans, the this, the that, the injections, I keep telling myself, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And like that has been like my repetitive mindset. But it is really just, overwhelming. And, right when we were ready to move forward for transfer, they're like, all right, let's do this hysteroscopy. Something I was asking to do and during my first cycle because I knew that once my second cycle, there could have been a chance we could just jump right back into like transfer. Um, and then this kind of would hold us up. So, advocating for yourself, speaking up, even if you don't know entirely the full story or just like questions, right? If you don't know something, just ask. There's so many different, again, terminology and things. I'm like, okay, talk to me in regular language, talk to me English. I need to know what's happening with my health, with my care, with my future. I just need to know. So after this hysteroscopy, our next plan is to hopefully go into transfer, and we'll see how that does. I am extremely hopeful, but I'm also very, very like it's you go on the fence and you're going back and forth, and you're like, I'm extremely hopeful, but this can go so many different ways. I want to plan for our future, and I want to plan for to have a child, and but IVF, as we know, takes away all of these surprises. It takes away all of the planning, all of the things, and so I'm just tiptoeing lightly and slightly.
Yeah, so much of what you just said, I think, is relatable from feeling like it's not a good fit with your team and your doctor, your clinic, and being open to second opinions and trying different clinics for different fits all the way through. I mean, I remember that big box of IVF medication and thinking the same, like, really, they're gonna let me do this? I'm gonna inject myself. Like, are we gonna mess this up? And then too feeling hijacked by the timeline and that you just don't have a control over that timeline. So I think all of this is so relatable and I don't know that it's something people realize until they've gone through the process. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, 100%. Even with like family and friends, we have to break that down and explain it in so many different ways. And until this day, the older community that we are with, like our parents, I'm like, they're just never going to understand. They're just in a different world. You have to hold some grace with that. Even my own mother, right? Like she had 7 kids, and I'm just like, you're just never going to understand my world, and it's okay. But it's unfortunate that the women in our community have to explain so in depth of what they're going through in the process of it all just to get a little bit of empathy.
It's so hard that the burden of that education is on the person who is also trying to manage the
Learn it.
logistics and figure out what is happening in their own body. I will say for anybody listening who is a friend or family member of someone who is going through fertility treatment or a challenging family building experience, we do have a whole section on our resource library that is specifically for you so that you can take some of the burden off of that person. You can learn what they're going through, whether it's a medicalized journey, adoption, surrogacy, whatever. And you can learn how to be that support person, even if you have never experienced anything like this before yourself. So hopefully it's, we'll take something off the plate of the people who are actively trying to grow their families. But with that in mind, with that community that you already have around you, how can someone show up for a friend or a family member who is struggling to build their family?
I think people from the outside, and I try to put myself in that perspective, like, okay, well, if I had a friend that was going through that, or if I had a family member that was going through that, and I personally never went through it, and I didn't know what I know today, what would I do? And so I had to say, well, I am a giving person. So maybe I would just, you know, I couldn't understand, but maybe I would create like an IVF care package, right? Let me just give them some, I don't know what you're going through, but here's some, ice packs, Epsom salts, nice bubble bath, nice, something that you can enjoy yourself with and Like maybe this will take some stress off of you, or maybe this will bring you a little bit of joy in your constant spiral of negativity. Um, and so you have to take a step back and say, okay, who is this person? Not what they're going through, but how have I helped this person before, or how have I connected with this person before, and and what do they like? And even if it's a cup of coffee, even if it's a let me make them dinner or have them over for dinner. Let's talk about something that's not IVF, um, that can really help them just stride through the things that they're going through currently. And so I think there's everybody's going through something, right? And I think that, of course, you can't say, my friend's a horrible friend because they're not here for me. And, they could be going through something themselves. But
Mhm.
I do think there's a healthy balance. And so you do need that connection, you do need that support. And if you don't have it, then, that it's really tough to get through um, anything in fertility if you don't have that backing for sure.
Yeah, I love that. What is something you would say to someone who's just starting to grow their family now?
I would say, well, one, throw the planners out. They don't exist. They don't exist in our world, especially from a person who is a planner. Like I'm an avid planner. I have calendars, my books, like my phone. I am the planner of trips. I am your go-to girl for like give you an itinerary. Like my world's planner, like I'm obsessed with planning. So yeah, just throw it away because just doesn't exist in IVF world, doesn't exist in infertility, it doesn't exist in trying to conceive in general, right? Like you can track all day, you can do all of the things, but when you are consistently consuming yourself with it, it becomes a burden more so than it becomes a joyful process. And then also just have something that you believe in higher than yourself. You don't have to be spiritual, you don't have to be religious, you don't have to, whatever that may be. It could be music, it could be, it could be religious, it could be faith, it could be something that just something that you believe in strongly that you can lean on. I'm very spiritual, so for me, it is God, it's faith, it's something that I truly look at, or that I pray about. But it doesn't have to be that. Like again, you can have your own motto, whatever that may be that gets you going. Because if you don't, you're going to feel so much solitude. Nonetheless, you're going to feel that, but it just helps. It truly does help. Your husband, your partner, your significant other, they are there through the ride for it, but they're not 100% going to know the physical toll of what you're going through, right? Emotionally, yes. Financially, of course. Physically, not so much because you are taking on the burden of that, right? Like you are doing the all of the procedures, all of the blood work, all of the injections. And so just having something that you can lean on 100%, I cannot, stress that enough.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. It's been really lovely getting a chance to talk to you. And before we close, is there anything that you wanted to share that we haven't asked about yet?
Like I can't stress it enough of like having something to lean on because it's hard. It gets hard. The only way you're getting on the other side of this is like through it. And that's everyone has an end goal here. Doesn't mean that you get to that end goal, right? Like, and I think
Yeah.
that's the problem, I see in this, even sharing with so many people that they think, oh, well, you're going through IVF, so you'll get a baby. There's no guarantee.
Yep.
There's no guarantees at all.
Yeah, that's an important thing, I think, to say out loud and for people to hear. Of course, that's what we all want, but it is true that we have to think about it isn't a guarantee, it isn't the easy button.
Yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
one word where you say the easy button, that's really what, some people really think it's like, "Oh, well, you're just taking some medicine and you're just gonna have a
Hmm.
baby and you can pick your gender," and, like, they think of it as, like, this, guaranteed experience of, like, and it's like, no, total opposite.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing your
Thank you
story up
guys, I
to this
appreciate
point.
it.
We're here for you no matter what happens next.
Yeah, thank you. Your program is amazing. There's nothing like connecting with the community that knows what you're going through.
Well, I'm sorry that these are the circumstances that we're meeting you, but I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you
Same.
found us, and we're here for you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week with more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at allpathsfb or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, to learn more about our work. And please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support. And today we want to recognize and thank the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services, a First Fertility Center. Your partnership is vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone who is struggling to grow their family. And to the entire All Paths community, thank you for being here. It's an honor to walk with you on your journey.